anyway. I can't, it's glued together.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is the first video of my makeup transformation series, and my mum kindly enough stood in for me to be on the first one, so I am going to be doing her makeup today. So I'm just starting off with some Smashbox hydrating primer, and I'm just blending that in all into her skin. This is her first time on camera, bless her, so you'll have to bear with her, she's a little bit nervous. So I'm now just going in with this Mally Cushion foundation, and she insisted that I used the brush to dip it into this, as it is her foundation. So I just used the brush to apply it, but then as you can see, I went in with my Real Techniques beauty blender just to blend that all out. I personally find that a beauty blender gives the best finish than a brush does. Sometimes brushes can leave streaks, so I would always recommend a beauty blender if you haven't tried it before. And I'm just going to bring that foundation onto her eyelids just to cancel out any discoloration. I'm now just going in with my Laura Mercier translucent setting powder, and I'm not really going to be baking under her eyes. As you can see, the more I press into the powder, the more it just soaks into the skin, so I'm just going to be setting generously underneath her eyes just to make sure the makeup doesn't move all night. It was her birthday that day, so we did go out for a meal and I wanted to make sure her makeup stayed on all night. I then just set the areas of her face where I feel that the foundation moves off the most, her T-zone area, and then just with a big Morphe brush I just set the rest of her face just to make sure the blusher and the bronzer will blend out nicely. So for bronzer I used the Milk Chocolate Solo Bronzer by Too Faced, and to apply that I just used a big fluffy Eco Tools brush. So you can see I'm just warming up her skin with the bronzer, just bringing it onto her cheekbones and up to her forehead. This is honestly such a neutral colour for a bronzer. It doesn't have an orange undertone at all, so if you are looking for a nice neutral colour, I would definitely recommend this bronzer. I did also bring that just onto her jawline just to accentuate that even more. I then just browned that bronzer down the sides of her nose. This wasn't necessarily to contour her nose, but I just wanted to give her nose a little bit more warmth and shape, so I just blended that in with my beauty blender to make sure there were no harsh lines. Then for blusher, I used a e.l.f. blusher palette. This doesn't actually have a name on it, so I can't really tell you exactly what it is, but it's just like a quad blusher palette and it has 4 different lovely shades in it. And I just used a big fluffy brush just to apply this onto her cheeks, just to give her skin a little bit more warmth. Then for highlight, I went in with the MAC Soft and Gentle highlight, and I used a Smashbox fan brush to apply this. And as you can see, it's such a lovely highlight. It just gives such a lovely natural glow to the skin, so if you're not looking for a blinding highlight, I would definitely recommend this one. Then for her brows, I went in with the NYX Micro Brow Pencil, and this is in the shade Espresso. Now I was a little bit wary of this colour at first, just because this is my brow pencil and my eyebrows are a lot darker than hers, but once you brush them through it turns out to be fine, so bear that in mind if you have maybe similar hair colour to my mum. And I did just zoom you in a little bit just so you can get a clearer view of how I'm filling them in. But as you can see, I'm not filling them in too bold or too harshly. I still wanted to make them look natural. And I then just set them using the NYX Control Freak Clear Brow Gel. I then just sprayed her face using some MAC Fix Plus, and this was just to make sure her skin wasn't powdery at all. She does like a dewy look, so I wanted to make sure she didn't have a matte finish. Then for eyeshadow, I used the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette, and I believe the first colour that I used was the shade Raw Sienna. So just with any big fluffy brush that you have, I'm just blending this into her crease and bringing it onto her lid as well. Because this is her transition colour, it doesn't really matter if it gets a little bit messier. You can kind of just apply this wherever you like, really. And then with a slightly more thinner brush, I dipped into the shade Burnt Orange, and as you can see, I'm keeping this a lot more deeper into her crease. I'm not bringing it as high up as I did with the first shade, just because I want this shade to give her eye a lot more definition, and as you can see, it really defines her crease a lot more, which is going to make her eyes look a lot more bigger. Then just with the same brush, I dipped into the shade Red Ochre, and as you can see, I'm keeping the shade a lot more onto her outer corner. I did bring it up to her crease slightly, but I wanted to keep the shade mainly onto her outer corner just to give her a lot more definition. And then of course I went back in with my blending brush to make sure that colour was blended out nicely together. But I'm keeping this shade a lot more lower down compared to the others. I'm not bringing it as high up as I did with the first two shades. I then went in with my blending brush just to make sure everything was blended out nicely together. And then I dipped into the shades Love Letter and Venetian Red, and these are quite bright pinky reddy shades, and as you can see I'm using a lot more of a smaller defined brush because I really want to keep these as low as I can and making sure I'm just keeping these on the outer corner of her eye. I do bring it slightly up into the crease just to blend out with the other colours, but these shades are what's going to give her the definition. So I'm making sure I'm keeping it just right onto the outer corners of her eye, and then of course I'm blending it in with my blending brush just to make sure there are no harsh lines. I then applied the shade Primavera, if that's how you say it. It's just a really nice gold champagne-y colour, and I did spray my brush with MAC Fix Plus first just to make the eyeshadow even more metallic and intense. And as you can see, it looks really pretty on her eye. I didn't necessarily cut her crease, but as you can see I'm just keeping this shade just on the inner portion of her eyelid, and then making sure I'm blending it out with the other colours just to make sure there's not such a harsh line between the two shades. So for her lower lash line, I believe I'm using a Smashbox shader brush, but I'm literally just going to be repeating exactly the same steps as I did on top of her eyelid. So starting off with that raw sienna shade, and then the burnt orange shade, and then going in with the Love Letter and the Venetian Red afterwards. But the darker I get with the colour, the more on the outer corner I want to keep it. I then went back in with the MAC Soft and Gentle highlighter, and I just applied this in her inner corners and slightly underneath her brow bone. So because I did such a bold smoky eye, I wanted to brighten up underneath her eyes a little bit. So I went in with the Smashbox contouring palette and took that highlight shade just to brighten up underneath her eyes. And I then attempted to apply some mascara on her, and this is the Maybelline Lash Sensational Mascara. And then for lashes, I went in with the Ardell Wispy Lashes, and I used Duo Glue to apply these. At this point I said to her, how do they feel, and she said that she could feel something on her eyes, which obviously was the case. But then I just went in with some NYX Epic Ink liner just to cover up the glue, make them look a little bit more natural, I guess you could say. I think she was a little bit shocked to see how different she looked. This was her first time wearing lashes, so I'm not quite sure what that little zoom up to the camera was. I don't think she had her glasses on, so that was probably why. Right?
I can't, it's glued together.
Come on. First experience wearing lashes, and that had to happen. Of course, that's always the way. But I'm now just outlining her lips with a NYX Slide On Glide On lip pencil, and this is in the shade Sugar Glass. And then I went in with a NYX Lingerie liquid lipstick, and this is in the shade Embellishment.